it's something where it's a really cool frontier that we're moving into. Like, we're now, I find it interesting because we're moving towards something that no one has ever really discussed in the open before. Like, I think something where, like, for example, we had the Me Too movement, the Harvey Weinstein scandals, the very clear-cut, this man was a predator, he did this, that is wrong. And then we had that Aziz Ansari thing come out.
I'm glad you brought that up.
You know?
Yeah.
Which was a crazy, where like I had all sides wrong. I had people...
What's your opinion about that? I'm curious.
I mean,
I had a pretty prominent opinion on Twitter.
Yeah.
I got in trouble for it.
To break it down, I think the article was badly written.
Yes.
It was very sensationalist, and it didn't help the woman at all. It did not put her in a good light. It just served to be this...
An opportunist.
Yeah, it felt very opportunist.
What color do you think that woman was?
She's probably white.
No one knows, but it was like a lot of people...
She was probably white. Aziz Ansari seems to date white women.
Well, that wasn't the reason. I was just like, I don't think a woman of color would ever do that. Would ever say that, like in that way.
I mean, I think it was for okay. It's like to cut it down.
Yeah.
It was a not well written article.
Very true.
It was for a site that no one had ever heard of.
I can't recall the site.
But it did bring up a really important conversation because we had this man, Aziz Ansari, who has done a lot for advancing stories of people of color. And so when we don't have a lot of people in power that elevate these voices, they become like gods, you know, they can do no wrong because you have one person, you know, like if we had a bunch of people, like white people, like one Harvey Weinstein wasn't like bad for all men, you know? So with Aziz Ansari, when it came out, that article was just crazy because for me, it brought it down to earth, where this was something that happens to so many women on dates, to so many people who go on dates, where you expect something and it doesn't turn out the way you expected it to. And I think, like, let's break down the facts of what happened.
Can I kind of get involved here? So I got some flack on Twitter for blaming him. I didn't think it was sexual assault, but what I did think was, I think everything they said was true. I didn't think one thing said was lie, but it was just how you interpret it. I do think he was kind of slimy for keep pushing it on her. Because I know I'm a guy. I know.
It was slimy for like.
She said
asking
no.
her to have
She didn't really said no, but she was. I mean, he's a comedian. He's very absurd. I mean, he can't be naive. He's a very.
Oh yeah, I mean, he wasn't naive. Like, this thing is, he wasn't naive. He picked a restaurant that was down the street from his apartment. Any guy who asks a girl out on a date and picks some place close to his apartment. Why would he do that? So that he can take her back to his place. No one does that. Like, oh, I love this place so much.
I always say, as a guy, you should always have instincts if a girl's interested. Like, you should have that instinct. But I think he has those instincts, and he knew that she was interested, but he kept pushing it on her. And I got a lot of shit because they're like, "Oh, you weren't defending an Asian guy for this," but I'm like, I'm not defending or not defending. It's just like, I'm a guy. I know, like, especially because I'm as observant as he is. Okay, like if a woman is not interested, I can feel it. And I won't push it on her. He obviously felt it and still pushed it on her. That's how I felt the whole situation happened.
Definitely.
And I don't think it was sexual assault because she could have at least kind of pushed and say no a little more. But he also is at fault too because he kept he intimidated her. I believed her when she said she intimidated her. I believed her. Of course. Because he's like, come on, you know. And she said no, they watched it.
He came from a level of power of his celebrity. That's what he had. He had his power of celebrity. But let's break down the facts of this article. So it wasn't a well-written article. There were sensational things about it.
Very much.
These are the sides of the argument. So this is what happened, what I know from the article, what I read. They met at this place. They exchanged numbers. They met on a date. Aziz Ansari, or whoever was in charge of his date planning, picked a restaurant that was close to his apartment. Like I said earlier, you don't pick a place that is close to your apartment unless you're really ready to be lucky that night. And I'm pretty sure with that guy, with that amount of celebrity, he has gotten lucky many times. You know, it comes to like when you have that level of celebrity, you don't have to try as hard. Because who are you? You're motherfucking Aziz Ansari. You're this awesome, you're this guy.
Yeah.
You know? And of course, people will fall over for that. You know, there are people who will fall over all over just to be photographed with Aziz Ansari, whatever. The article did not help this girl because it painted her in this light of like, it made her sound like a very callous, selfish, calculating bitch. And I don't think that's what that girl was. I think that girl was this person who thought that she really liked this guy, who she knew from TV and everything, whatever, and wanted to go on a date with him. She expected them to like finish dinner, have dessert, have a nice walk, maybe go upstairs for like a nightcap, whatever. Immediately from that article, it was saying like he was like they weren't even through their first course or whatever. And he was like, "You want to go back to my place?" So there was something like the miscommunication for both of them. She wanted something, he wanted something else. He wanted sex, she wanted a romantic date or whatever. She went back to his place, and I think this is something where a lot of people got really angry about because a lot of people, a lot of women blamed this girl for going home with him. You know, and I think there is something very, very wrong with our society when we do that, because there is a point in every person's life where they agree to something that they are uncomfortable with because they are afraid of the consequences otherwise. You know, if she were to say no, like bad things could have happened to her. Like, I'm not saying that he would have been a violent person or whatever, but it did not behoove her to say no.
I'm not saying I totally disagree with you.
No, I'm just saying, okay, let me finish. It's that I have been in situations where my internal mind was saying, leave, you need to leave, you need to leave, let's leave now. But there is something about you or about me where I froze. And I allowed things to happen to me because I was scared that if I were to piss off this guy, he would do something worse to me. You know? And I think a lot of women are afraid of the worst thing. And that is why, like, when people were blaming this girl for why'd she come home with him, blah, 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 she, like, it is like when you go to someone's house, there is a certain kind of unwritten thing where it's like, well, we're gonna fool around, there's something. But for her to go to his house and she wasn't able to leave, there was something in her that she was like, she froze. And I think it is wrong for a lot of people to say like, oh, you pushed the wave of feminism backward decades because you didn't leave. But it's like, why are you blaming her? If you say like he should have read the signs, she definitely wasn't into it, you know? And I think that's something with the way we've raised men, to not read these signs of it. If it's not like a fucking hard yes, if it's not a full agreement, then you should stop. Then this is not okay. But I think
that part I agree with.
Yeah, we've also trained women to be so uncomfortable with everything, to deal with the uncomfortableness because to deal with the discomfort, because otherwise it's scary. Otherwise, we could piss him off. I have to make an excuse on my phone in order to get off this roof safely. Because if I were to say to this guy, oh, I don't like you, we have seen those stories where this woman said, I don't like you, and what happened to her?
But don't you think it's more helpful if it was more women were encouraged to say no?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, of course. But saying no is hard. Saying no in saying no in a professional situation is hard.
Yeah.
In a personal, private situation is even harder. So I think yes, we need to train women to be better at saying no. We have to. I have to be better at saying no. Like, I'm not comfortable with this. We have to also train men to ask, is this okay?
Dial it back a little bit. But you were having, I guess, your little issue of like women saying she should have said no. You were having an issue with that.
Yes.
But shouldn't that be the right thing to do?
No, they were blaming her for it. They were like, she should have said no.
I think the word blame is not good. Like,
no, they were like, there was that woman, that anchor woman that said like, oh, you have pushed our feminism wave back by these decades because you didn't leave, and like, you know what happened to us when we were older, when we were younger, we just left. Like, it's not that easy, and we shouldn't be blaming these people. Like, we shouldn't blame girls, because we constantly blame girls so much in our society that we need to be like, okay, it was okay that you didn't know what to do in that situation. Let's give you the tools. Let's train girls from a young age to give them the tools to say no, and we haven't done that. We have never given girls that to say no. Like, in schools, for example, we start them from the beginning to be uncomfortable, like with the dress code. So I can't wear a spaghetti strap because I distracted a boy. Is that not the boy's fault for being distracted? Like, because of what I'm wearing? And yet we send girls home. We send them home for to change. We take them out of class because they wore a skirt that was too short. So what if my skirt is too short? Whatever. I came here to learn. Why is that boy looking at me that way? He shouldn't do that. I shouldn't be this piece of meat to him that makes him distracted. And I think from a very young age, we have trained girls that it's always their fault. It's always our fault. When it's not. It is not our fault that we have been sexualized constantly in the male gaze, in media. Why do we have 16-year-old models and these sexy things? Like, why are we doing that? Because we start from a very young age training these girls to be sexual beings when they're not ready to, when we don't have to be, when we are more than sexual beings. And I think that is the big problem that the Aziz Ansari thing brought out, is that like, it's not a black and white issue, it's not a clear-cut issue, and that we have a lot more problems than we thought we did.
So do you blame both, or do you blame Aziz?
I don't blame.
I blame both.
I don't blame.
More Aziz than the women, but I do blame both. Because I feel Aziz.
I can't say that I blame.
Well, I blame Aziz because the reason I blame Aziz is because he's so openly feminist. I mean, that is a lot on him, because if you're openly saying you're a feminist, you definitely should be a woke person. Yeah, you have no excuse to do that kind of stuff. Like if you were just a regular guy, I'm not saying it's right, but you're Aziz, and you're a pro-feminist person. You're constantly openly saying it, and then you do this kind of thing, and you're saying, well, I didn't know any better. How can that be possible? Like, how is that possible? That is not possible. So either he's a fraud, or he's just taking advantage of that woman that one night, or both.
Or like that, he has been geared and he's been raised in this society where he has been given that privilege, that privilege that all men have.
I don't think guys have that excuse anymore. Guys know now.
No, they don't have that excuse anymore.
Like, this is 2018.
But I think that's what the article came out with. And I think that's something where even men who say that they are feminists were angry about that article, that were blaming the girl, that do that thing on the regular, that go on dates with girls and expect that if they pay for dinner, they are entitled to things. It's not just Aziz Ansari. This is not just Aziz Ansari that is dealing with this. It's men in general, where like, I think even if you are the most woke man or the most woke woman, I think it's time for us to fucking realize that we might be wrong in certain things, that things we have done are not okay. Things we have allowed because we thought, I mean, at least I'm a good guy, are not okay anymore.
Yeah. I think it's important for us to stay in our lanes. So it's like, I think it's important for me to call it Aziz. Like, I can call it the woman I want, but it's not like, I think it's up to women to talk to her, and it's up to me to criticize Aziz. I think like when I have a voice, I should spend it to criticize Aziz. And I know a lot of Asian men like on Twitter and stuff have gotten really angry at me because I criticized him. They're like, we're supposed to be a bro culture, right? Like
Yeah,
you're supposed to defend him.
Also been like a very big.
Yeah. We'll talk about that another podcast. We'll talk about another podcast. I'm saving that one for another podcast. Because we can go an hour on that one.
Yeah.
But for in this particular instance, I just feel like however women want to talk to her, I think that's your lane. But I do think it's important for men to call out Aziz for what he did and not defend him too much.
I think for us in general as women is that we cannot approach any of this from a high ground. And I think there's something about creating a safe space, because the thing is, when you are in that situation, your mind is racing for things like, I could do this, I should have done this, I could have done that. And you often feel like you're making the wrong choice. And women, and I don't want to say like only women have experienced this, but I can only speak to my personal experience, and it is that we are constantly second guessing ourselves.